Hello there, welcome or welcome back to Beauty Bees and to a Pan Those Eyeshadows update. I am doing this roulette style based on the prompt list that Makeup with Lainey made last year. Her video, or her channel I think actually, will be linked down below. I've modified the prompts list a little bit because I suspected that I would be working on some shadows for a very long-term commitment, so I figured I would just keep to the prompts that would lead me to shadows that I really did want to work on for an extended period of time. So this is actually going to be a really exciting update. Not because I actually hit pan in anything, because of course I didn't. That's almost always how these updates go. I've hit literally one pan this year. But I decided at the beginning of this project that if I'd been using shadows for 4 months and I hadn't hit pan in anything, that I was going to be rolling them out and trying some new things. And it's May, so I've been working on my first set of shades for 4 months, and I get to choose some new shadows today. But first, let's talk about the shades that will be sticking around for at least another month, starting with a shade from Viseart. This is the Petite Pro 3 palette, and I have been working on this like light rosy brown shade. It's matte. Pretty basic, but it's a nice basic, and that's what really caused me to bring this into the project. I thought it would be something that I could wear all the time with any look, and I would enjoy it, and I have. I've actually worn this quite a bit. Towards the beginning of the project, I was actually doing a really good job of tracking my usage, and that has just fallen apart completely. So I was looking at my totals before I sat down to film this video, and it's like, oh, apparently I used this one time in the past month. Well, I know that's not right, so I put everything else into major question. But I quite like this. It's really pretty. Really, these Viseart mattes as a whole are this really nice, smooth, blendable, and buildable formula. I strongly recommend them. The shimmers are nice as well, but the mattes I think are really where Viseart stands out. In any case, we'll have to talk about that again next month because I am nowhere near hitting pan on it. Next up, we have a shade that I actually just rolled in the last update. This is from my Lorac Mini Pro palette in Mystic Oak. You can see that this is a well-loved palette because it looks absolutely filthy. So here's the inside. This is such a beautiful, beautiful color scheme. I absolutely adore the shine. I love how neutral it is. This can go very workplace, daytime. It can go super, super sultry. I've been working on this brown shade here, and I think this is probably the shade in this project that I've worn the most in the past month. Probably my most worn look in this entire project. Well, I guess not this entire project because I've only had this shade in for 1 month, but probably 2 to 3 times a week for the past month. I've been wearing this all over the lid and then maybe blending a little bit of a pink or another shade that we're going to be talking about, which let's just skip to that. This camel shade in my crease, maybe putting something a little deeper in the outer corner to deepen things up, but it's just so beautiful. I mean, look at the shine. And then my nails are also very shiny, and I'm having a hard time focusing on the eyeshadow, but very pretty. Okay, the last shade that's going to be sticking around for another month is from Luxie. And this is the shade Get Naked. In the pan, I think it looks like a rather unassuming sort of my skin tone nude shade, but swatched out, the shine becomes a lot more obvious. It becomes obvious that this pearly blue sheen. It's really pretty. I think it's an absolutely gorgeous eyeshadow. It's kind of subtle, but it's so pretty. I don't have anything else to say. It's just interesting. You could totally use this as a topper because it has that sheerness to it. One way that I like to wear this is I'll put a pretty subtle shimmer all over my eye, like maybe a pink or something. And then I'll pop Get Naked right in the center of the lid, and I find that it really brings that shimmer to life. It really brightens up the whole look, brightens up the face even. I really like it. And I think there's a really good chance that I could hit pan in this shade. The only other pan that I've managed to hit in this project has also been a Luxie shimmer, and I find that I pick up quite a bit of product every time I use this, so I think you can tell there is a dip going. And if I were to focus my usage in this area of the pan, I think I could hit pan in this. We'll have to see. All right, so that is it for the shades that are going to be staying with me. For the shades that are going to be rolling out of the project, first we have Cherry Crush, the shade Cherry Stem. This is a ColourPop palette, and this is my favorite shade out of the palette, so I decided it was the one I was going to work on. Also, it was the only one that I could see myself using often enough to potentially hit pan, and it does look used. Really, the whole palette looks more used now than it did when I brought this into the project, which I think is fantastic. And it's definitely gotten me to reach for especially these two shades a little bit more often than I think I might have otherwise. But I'm nowhere close to having hit pan. There's not even a real dip. The surface is just disturbed. So that was a successful 4 months of panning. Next up, we have a shade that was brand new when I brought it into the project, so it's not too surprising to me that I haven't hit pan. This is a Natasha Denona single. It's from the Retro Glam palette, but this is something that I got on Sephora for like 100 points. Or maybe it was enter a code for a gift with purchase. I don't know. It was some kind of little freebie from Sephora. I do have a dip. I do not have pan. I don't imagine that I will for a very long time, but it's a pretty shade. And I think that this and Get Naked kind of competed with each other for my attention because they're not identical. This is more champagne, whereas this definitely leans blue on the eyes. And this is a little bit on the foil side, whereas this is quite a smooth shimmer. But they're both light shades that I could use in my inner corner. So I think there was a little bit of competition there. Another shade that I had been working on since the beginning was from the Child palette. This is from ColourPop again, and I was working on the shade Right Hand Mando. I actually did make some decent progress in this shade, which I'm really happy to see. This is a beautiful palette. It's actually my favorite palette in my collection, or at least that's what I termed it when I decided to bring this into the project. I think that might have changed a little bit, but it's still definitely among my top 2 or 3 favorites. Really depends on the day which would be my favorite, but I just think that this is such a pretty shade. It looks very silver in the pan, at least in contrast to everything else, but when you sort of look at it outside the context of the palette, you can see that it's a light green, kind of gold, kind of silver. It's really pretty. And I'm glad that I brought it into the project because who wouldn't want to work on that? I mean, that's gorgeous. And then finally, the last shade that I've been working on is in a palette that it just decided to snap a little bit on me. Well, that's not good. The lid just decided to snap on my Natasha Denona palette. This is the Ayana. It is currently a little bit fragile, so I'm not going to mess with it. But I've been working on the shade Harlow, which is this light camel shade. When I have the palette closed, it doesn't even look used. I've used this more than any other shadow in the project. It's just a deep, wide pan. There is a ton of product in these shadows, and there should be because these are expensive palettes. I got mine on BoxyCharm, I think, maybe Ipsy, for not very much money. I think I spent like $13 on this, but these regularly retail for like 50-ish, which I think is a little steep. It's a lot of it steep. Don't pay that. But it is a really pretty palette. I have used Harlow many, many times, even though it doesn't look like it. Oh well. Okay, so now it's time to bring in some new shadows. So I have 3 that I'm still working on. So I think I'm going to choose just 3 instead of 4. I feel like 6 is a little bit more reasonable and doable for me than 7 shadows at a time was. I felt like I didn't get as much use as I would have liked to on all of my shadows when I had 7 in. So let's pick the 6. And my computer turned off on me. One sec. All right, I have my list pulled up. I've got my random statement written. Moment of truth. The prompts that I'm going to be working on are numbers 2, 4, and 36. So number 2 is a ColourPop shimmer. Okay. Number 4, a mainstream brand shadow. And then number 36 is a pop culture reference. I have ideas for all of those. Let me go pick the shades out and we'll talk about them in just a sec. I've made my selections. They're beautiful. Let's get into it. So first, for a pop culture reference, I decided on this Luxie eyeshadow. I had a lot fewer pop culture references in my collection than I kind of thought I did. I mean, I guess I could have picked any of the ColourPop palettes that are based on an IP, but I don't know. That didn't seem like what I wanted to do. I was gonna say it doesn't seem right. Like, this is not a moral thing. But this is Phone Home from Luxie, and of course it is an ET reference with this alien green shade and a name like Phone Home. I guess I say of course. I don't know specifically that it is, but I would think that it has to be, right? It is so bright and fun. I find that because so much of my eyelid is hidden when my eyes are open, that I can often get away with wearing brighter eyeshadows, maybe than would be totally appropriate in a lot of situations for people whose lids show more fully when their eyes are open. But I think that this is going to be a fun one to use. I don't know if I'm going to be able to show it on camera, but this has a strong pink shift to it as well. Like, when I am looking at my arm right now, I'm seeing a light pink to about here and then sort of a minty green shade. You guys are seeing a very, like, true spring green. It's pretty. I think it'll be fun to use. And I find that with the Luxie shades, I've used a little bit more of them every time I dip my finger in, so I think I will maybe be able to hit pan on that within the 4-month range. Now, next up, for a mainstream shadow, I decided to work on a criminally underutilized palette in my collection, which is the Teddy Girl from Butter London. I actually wasn't supposed to get this. I got this through FabFitFun and they just sent me a completely wrong item, but they told me to keep it and sent me still a wrong item, but a replacement. So here is what this looks like. And I think that I'm going to work on the shade Penelope, which Penelope is down here. It's the deeper violet shade. I think Beatrice which is the same level of depth but warmer shade, is probably the shade that I've used the most in this palette. But the quality on this is good. I mean, it's nothing super exciting. It's essentially Butter London's take on a modern Renaissance color story. But I think that'll be pretty. I think that'll be nice to add a little bit of depth to the looks that I could come up with using the other shades. And I really do like a green with a berry. I find those two shades really come together in a nice way. Usually when I've done that, I've done it with a much lighter take on a berry or a pink, but I think this could be interesting. I'll have to play around with that. And then for the last shade, I had a ColourPop shimmer, so I decided to bring out my Cabana Club palette, which this is such a good little ColourPop palette. I don't know why this never caught on. I mean, they just put out so much stuff that everything can't catch on, but I think this is a really fun little color scheme. And I think that I'm going to work on Limelight, which is this very yellow gold, because that just seems like a really classic, versatile shade to work on during the summer. So there it is, the finger, and now swatched out on the arm. I definitely have more color going on in this project now than I ever have before. These three are kind of scaring me now that I have them swatched out, but I think I'm up for the challenge. So I think that wraps up this update. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you are doing Pan those eyeshadows, I hope it's going really well for you, and I hope I see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.